All right, everyone. Jeremy Knopf here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified live stream. And this is actually the last episode of the year. I think I actually said that last week and did not realize we had one more day of the year left for the episode. So this one absolutely will be the last one of the year since this is the last day of the year. So hope you guys are all ready for an awesome New Year's Eve celebration. Today, what we're going to talk about is how to supercharge your 2026 public relations impact to become a recognized authority. Now, we're not going to have any fancy graphics or anything today. This is just going to be me sharing some knowledge, sharing some advice. But the idea here is I want to give you guys a framework that you can follow to really get the most out of your PR efforts so that you could become a recognized authority in your industry, attract more opportunities, and earn more money. So the first thing that we're going to talk about to supercharge your PR efforts is building an authoritative personal brand. Now, this is critical. It's a topic I've talked about a bunch, and I've actually I know we've done an episode on each of the key topics I'm going to address here today. I've done a previous episode that goes into each of those very, very detailed. So what we'll probably do is later on YouTube, I'll go ahead and put links to all of those other episodes going deeper into these subtopics. We're not going to do that during the show here today, though. But building a personal brand is critical because you've got hundreds, maybe thousands, in some cases even millions of competitors out there. So it's a very noisy world. And a personal brand is what separates you and makes people want to do business with you. It gives people a sense of connection, right? It gives them a reason to actually feel engaged with your brand. But you have to remember that what attracts the right people is also going to repel the wrong people. And that's okay. That's all part of the process. It's part of the equation. You can't attract some people without also repelling some people. There's no way to create a personal brand that appeals to everyone. And frankly, you don't want to do that anyway, because the attraction will be so bland, so minimal, so ineffective that they may follow you, but they likely won't do business with you. So you have to have an effective personal brand. In order to do that, you have to be polarizing. And I don't mean polarizing in the sense that, you alienate people, you're very outspoken and brash, but you have to be very clear in who you serve, what you do, how you do it, why you do it, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a personal brand is. And it's not just aesthetics. It's not a fancy website. It's not a cool signature logo. It's not your headshot. It's much deeper than that. So it's foundationally, it is your story. Part of that is the hero's journey, which we've talked about before. Part of it is who you serve and why you serve them. So I know I've talked about my personal story where I ended up on my deathbed several years ago and spent about 2 years there while everything withered away to nothing. And then when I got to the end of my rope, still sick, but now completely out of money, I leveraged public relations to put myself back on the map, because being gone for 2 years, I might have well has been some rando on Fiverr. So it was shortly after that I then pivoted to focusing entirely on PR to help people take whatever it is they do and become a recognized authority in their industry for that. And so that's my story. I've built my entire personal brand around that. Well, to be more specific, I have evolved my personal brand around that particular aspect of it. Previously, I had run a full service digital marketing agency. My personal brand back then was different. But you need to find that thing about you that makes you really unique and different, and something that the right people will be attracted to and the wrong people will be repelled by. The other aspect of your personal brand is your content. Now, your content plays a huge role because it helps you to demonstrate your expertise. We're not just getting up here talking about how awesome we are. We're not just getting up here, pitching all the time. We're not just trying to sell. We're demonstrating our knowledge so that people can see that we are qualified to solve whatever problems they have that you solve for people. The other cool thing about your content is that it helps you to build your audience or your tribe. By constantly creating content, you're not only getting out there and demonstrating your expertise, but you're also building an engaged audience, people who are going to see your content. They're going to learn from it. They're going to comment on it. They're going to like it. They're going to share it. They'll tell other people about it. And so this is critical because it hits these two components in a very powerful way. It also plays a big role in what journalists see. So if a journalist goes and looks you up, whether you pitched them a story or a publicist pitched a story for you, they want to go and look up your content and see, is this person actually qualified to opine on whatever the story is about? So this is a critical component of your personal brand. And then the other part of it is who you're aligned with. So you guys have all heard the phrase, birds of a feather flock together. The same applies here. So you want to try to get aligned with some of the top people in your industry, some of the top entrepreneurs that other people know, like, and trust, journalists in your industry, right? One of the things I like to do if I'm going to pitch a new journalist that I've never met before, one of the things I'll often do is I'll go find the other journalists at that outlet and see if I'm not connected to a bunch of them. I will go and send connection requests to a lot of those people so that when I send that particular journalist who I'm trying to pitch a connection request, they're going to see, oh, hey, this guy's already connected to all these people that I already know, like, and trust, right? It's that power of association. So you want to get connected with the top people in your industry. You want to get connected with maybe you have a type of industry where there's legislative bodies that have an impact. We've got a client in the drug testing industry. We have helped him to get aligned with numerous congressmen and senators who have oversight on that industry and who are involved in some of the regulatory practices behind that industry. That's a huge thing. Getting connected with the journalists in your industry. Basically, anybody influential to the people in your industry. And then also on the broader scale, right? So maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're not in the real estate industry, but if you are aligned with somebody like Grant Cardone or who's another good real estate person? Kim Kiyosaki would be a great one. RJ Bates. There's a lot of very high profile people in the real estate industry. Even if you're not necessarily in that industry, being aligned with the types of folks that a broad section of Americans would see as somebody influential and authoritative, kind of tangentially connected to your industry, right? They're not necessarily in your industry, but they are prominent entrepreneurs. Patrick David Bett is a good example. Tony Robbins is another great example. Right? You've got these very high profile people that if you're associated with them, other people will see that and take that as a sign, essentially, that you've been vetted to some degree. So who you're aligned with is something else that plays a big role in your brand, and it can help you to build your authority status and get featured in the media a lot more easily. The other thing we want to do to really crush it in 2026 is to take control of the search results for your name. Now, the first thing people are going to do when they connect with you or they come across information about you or they hear about you is they're going to go online and they're going to look you up. They're going to see what shows up. So go and do a Google for your name. Does what you see inspire trust? Is it just your website? Is it just your social media profiles? Or is there other content out there that's authoritative, like third-party validation, right? Have you been featured in the media? Have you won significant awards? Do you have articles or columns out there? And then media features as well. All of these things play a big role in what people see when they go to look you up. Now, this is also something that's important if you ever end up into a reputation management scenario. You know, you have some kind of PR crisis or somebody starts unfairly attacking you. If you've got a lot of these assets already out there and ranking, it makes it a lot harder for these negative ones to show up in the first page or, you know, within the first few pages. So this is a critical component of your PR efforts in 2026. And then on top of that, we don't want to just earn these assets and just let them sit out there. We want to leverage we want to leverage SEO to help them rank higher, right? We want to push certain assets up higher in the search results. Maybe you were featured in a prominent publication. Maybe you won a very prestigious award. You want to leverage SEO. And in this case, you've already got the authority of that particular piece of content, whether it's, let's say, the Inc. 5000 or the Inc. Power, I think it's Power Player Awards, right? We won that a few years. Those are things that will tend to rank well just to begin with, based just on the authority of the domain. But if you also go and throw links to it from other websites, other assets that you own, throw links to it from your social media. And if you're on the more technical side, you could even get into the black hat side of SEO and spam the internet with a shitload of links to throw links at those assets. That then helps them rank higher and creates a more authoritative image when somebody searches your name in a search engine. All right, the next thing we're going to do to dominate our public relations efforts in 2026 is to build and nurture relationships with journalists. Now, this is critical. You know, we all have to have a media list, right? We're going to build that list. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can go to the media outlet. You can go to LinkedIn. You can go to X. You can buy lists, which I generally don't recommend that as much. You can use some of these PR tools that have media databases. The list, though, is less important than the relationship. So the other side of this also is that it's more about relevance and less about volume. So I would rather have a list of 10 journalists who are very engaged, who respond to my emails. They're very approachable. They're very receptive to what I have to say, as opposed to a list of 50,000 journalists who never open my emails, never respond, never do anything, right? So relevance over volume wins every single time. Now, once we've got this list, we've got the journalists that we want to start pitching, we want to pitch them regularly. Now, this is important because it keeps you on their radar, but we have to be careful to keep the pitches varied. Don't just keep pitching the same story week after week, because all that's going to do is piss them off. They're going to get tired of it. They're going to mute you. They're going to block you. And then you're going to get nothing out of it. Now, if you're pitching for yourself, you're going to have a bit of a challenge sending them enough variety to where you can really build that relationship as effectively compared to what I could do, because I can reach out to a journalist. I can pitch them numerous different stories because I've got numerous clients that would be relevant for them. So I have the benefit of, because I've got a large pool of clients that I'm pitching stories for, I can send them a lot more pitches, a lot more frequently, because I've got just natural variety by the nature of the different people that I'm working with. If you're doing your own PR, you're going to have to be very conscious that you're not just overdoing it and sending them the same shit over and over and over. Okay. Now, a couple of things I want to touch on here. It is important, especially early in the relationship, not to just send bullshit emails to try and, stay on their radar, right? Don't send them an email asking what they're working on. Don't just email them, to check in or see how they're doing. They don't have time for that. That's going to annoy them and is probably going to get you blocked pretty quickly. So just stick to sending them pitches. And if you do that consistently, eventually you will get some traction. On top of that, we also want to engage on social media. And to do that, we're going to go to their posts on whatever platform or platforms they're active on. We're going to engage in a substantive way, right? Not something like great post or very insightful or anything like that. You want to go and comment in a way that actually brings value. And, like each of the topics I've covered so far today, we've got previous episodes that went super deep into all of this as well, right? So the whole building and nurturing relationships, that is a previous episode that we went quite in depth on a while back. So that's another one that we'll include in the description once this gets published live to YouTube. But all of these are key to building and nurturing the relationships with journalists so that when they see your email in their inbox, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to feature you, but it makes them a lot more likely to see and recognize your name and hopefully open it. And if it's relevant to them, then it may turn into a media feature for you. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to land a column at a trade publication. I want every one of you to set a goal to land a column at some trade publication in your industry. This is a very powerful way to build authority because you are being published in a publication that focuses entirely on your industry. So this is huge. And it's also something that you can leverage further down the road for placement in other broader publications like Inc., Fast Company, Fortune, things like that. Now, when it comes to trade publications, there's a couple of things you need to know. One is that there's less competition than local media or tier one media. When I say tier one, this is the top publications that we all know, like, and trust. I just mentioned Fast Company, Inc., and Fortune. Those are examples of tier one media. But even though there's less competition, there is a lot more vetting. So you are being evaluated not by a journalist who kind of has an outsider's perspective of your industry, but by an industry professional. A lot of times, these publications are run by industry professionals, right? It's not just a staff of journalists whose job is just to write about the industry. They'll typically have a few of those, but a majority of the people writing for a publication like that, they are just people who work in the industry and they're writing for the publication to share their knowledge and to build authority status. So a lot of times what happens is when you pitch an outlet like that and you want to write an article for them, they're going to ask some of these other contributors who they already know and trust. You know, is this person legit? What do you think about their ideas? What do you think about this perspective? Does this all sound solid to you? So you have to really, really be on point when it comes to this. And keep in mind, like I said, a lot of times it's not staff heavy. A lot of the contributors are just people who are in the industry, because a lot of the manpower behind these outlets is essentially volunteer. They can be slower to respond sometimes. So keep that in mind. Don't be overly aggressive or overly assertive. Give people a little bit of grace. They may not get back to you right away, but that's because in addition to whatever they're doing for this publication, they're also running their business in your industry. So keep that in mind. It's going to take you a long way in your efforts. And then the last thing we're going to talk about for what we need to do to absolutely crush it in 2026 is to start a podcast sharing industry insight. I love podcasts because it gives you an opportunity to sit down and go deep on a topic. So if you are writing an article, you may get a chance to write 750, maybe 1,000, maybe even 2,000 words. Generally, you're not going to see an article much longer than that most of the time. That sounds like a lot, but in reality, for a decent reader, that's maybe a 5-minute read. So you really can't put a lot of information in an article in most cases. But with a podcast, you have a chance to sit down and talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes maybe even an hour. I think the Joe Rogan podcast, which is one of the most popular podcasts in the world, is several hours. And there's several other podcasts nowadays that are in that several hour range. So you get to go really deep on a topic. And that gives you a chance to really demonstrate your expertise in a very meaningful way. You can really touch on the nuance and the subtlety that you wouldn't get a chance to dig into in an article. So that helps you to create authority status. But that authority status comes from two things. Obviously, you're demonstrating your knowledge, your expertise in the content, but you're also creating exposure and trust. So if you've got a podcast, you get a lot of exposure because you can put it up on YouTube. You can also list it in IMDb, by the way, and you absolutely should. And I know I've covered that in a training session inside Spartan Community. So if you're a member of Spartan Community, definitely check that out. But you've got YouTube. You used to, I'll have to double check, but you used to be able to put it up on Amazon. You've got Rumble is another video platform you can put it up on. You can put it up on Twitch. You can put it up on, if you do just the audio version, you can put it up on a number of podcast services. And I think some of the podcast services are now including video in their platforms as well. So you may be able to put video in some of these other ones as well. And then basically you're now being in all these libraries. You're being sent out to all the aggregators. And this becomes a great way to really start to expand your footprint in a much larger way. And then as far as the trust goes, look, if you can get up here and just talk off the cuff for 20, 30, 60 minutes on a particular topic, that's pretty damn clear that you know what you're talking about. So that inspires a lot of trust, and it helps you to be perceived far more authoritative. Now, because we get to go deep, like I said, you get to really demonstrate a much larger amount of knowledge to them. And a lot of times somebody may be working out or driving to work or running or whatever, and they're listening to the podcast. So you've essentially got a captive audience. Whereas if they're just sitting down at their desk, they're reading an article, and then a phone call comes in, or somebody walks into their office, or, any number of things happen that can distract them. They, step away from the computer, and then they end up not even bothering coming back to the article. But if they're out here, they're jogging or they're driving to work and they're listening to your podcast, they're going to listen to it until they get to their destination. So this is a really good chance to have a captive audience where you would not normally have that opportunity. And another really awesome aspect of podcasts that I love, and honestly, I don't think enough people utilize this, is that it's a great opportunity to connect with people that you could not otherwise connect with. So if you just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or send them an email or even pick up the phone and call them, everybody's busy. People don't have time for chit chat. They don't have time to just get to know somebody who reaches out to them. Man, if I told you the number of emails that I shit can, or more accurately, that Chrissy shit cans for me, of just people reaching out, hey, I'd love to get together and catch up. I'd love to chat sometime. Dude, I have no idea who you are. There's no benefit to me. So no. So the other side of that dynamic is with a podcast, you can reach out to them, invite them on your podcast as a guest and interview them. And now they get to come out here and share their knowledge. And in doing so, they're reaching a larger audience. They're building authority status, but it's also helping you by creating great content. And a cool thing about an interview in a podcast, because you can either do just you talking, or you can do you interviewing somebody. And I've done both on this quite a bit. But if you're interviewing them, that makes your podcast a hell of a lot easier. If I sit down and I do an episode where I'm just talking and I'm teaching a particular topic, I have to put together an outline. I have to put together my plan for what I'm going to talk about in that podcast. And then I have to sit there and talk through all of that. If you're interviewing somebody, you could just have a natural conversation. You don't even really need to plan much of anything. But now you've developed a more natural, organic relationship with that person. So they are going to be more likely to open your emails in the future, to take your calls in the future. So this is a great way to get out there and start establishing some relationships that you could not establish in any other format, any other medium. So this is a great way to make connections. And then you've got the benefit of, I talked earlier about personal branding and alignment with certain people. This builds that alignment with those people. And you kind of generate authority by proximity, right? Because you're associated with these people, you get some of their authority status, right? Because why would they be talking to you if you're a nobody who doesn't know what you're doing? Clearly, they're talking to you because you are, just like them, an expert, an authority in your industry. So this is incredibly powerful, and it's honestly one of the most powerful aspects of podcasting, and it's one of the reasons that I love it. So those are the things that we're going to do in 2026 to absolutely crush our public relations efforts and become a more visible, recognized authority in our industry. So we're going to go ahead and roll into Jeremy's PR PSA, which is: public relations is a multi-front war that requires multiple elements executed together to make you a recognized authority in your industry. Now, I demonstrated that in some of the topics that we covered. I mean, we talked about doing a podcast, landing a column at a trade pub, building and nurturing these relationships with journalists, taking control of the search results, and building a personal brand. All of these are completely different but intertwined topics that play a huge role in your public relations efforts. They play a huge role in how you're perceived by your audience, by your prospects, by journalists, by other people in your industry. So you need to leverage all of these tactics to get out there and build that authority status. So that's all I've got today. I don't know if we had any. Okay, so Dr. K had a question here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on the screen, and we will see what we've got here. All right, so Dr. K is asking, I work with successful entrepreneurs who sometimes want to establish themselves in a new arena, shifting the brand they've been known for. Do you have any suggestions on how to best do that? Yes, Dr. K, I absolutely do, especially considering that that is my story as well. So I did it a little bit slower, I think, than I could have when I did mine. Some people will choose to do it rather abruptly. Some people will do it in a more graduated process. When I transitioned to public relations, or rather to focus specifically on public relations, the way that I did it was I still ran my agency as a full service agency, but I started going after new PR clients. I started generating results for them. And then as we had built up a large pool of clients that had gotten amazing results from us, and I had, of course, continued to build my brand side of things as I'm talking about public relations and I'm teaching and I'm getting published on the topic. Once we had all those elements in place, I eventually started focusing less and less on the agency side and just more on the PR side. And it was probably a year or so that I ran this transition. And then once I had got to the point where I had enough clients, I had enough case studies, I had enough proof from that perspective, and along the way, I had been publishing a ton of content about public relations and hadn't really been talking much about any of the other stuff. That was when I then did the full rebrand, rebuilt the website, rebranded literally everything, both the company website and my personal brand website. I rebranded all my social media profiles, my bios, everything. So I did it a little bit more slowly. If you're in a situation where you need to do it more abruptly, you can certainly do that, but you're going to have to be very aggressive and you're going to have to put in a lot more effort in a smaller period of time than you ordinarily would. Now, it really depends on your circumstances. If your business, if you just sold your business and you're getting into something different, or your old business went out of business, or industry change made your business irrelevant, there's a lot of different reasons why it might happen. That's going to dictate how you approach it, but you could really go either way. It just depends on the circumstances, but you have to really lean into the new stuff. So regardless of whether you're doing it instantly or over time, just start letting go of all the old stuff. When I started transitioning to focusing entirely on PR, I stopped talking about SEO. Didn't mean that I didn't take on new clients. Didn't mean that if people asked me about it, I didn't answer them. Didn't mean that I, didn't still have tons of stuff on the topic out there in various media outlets, on social media, all that. I just put all of my new efforts going forward into public relations. And then I waited until I had enough clients, I had enough case studies before I ended up rebranding the websites and all of our marketing materials. So that was my approach. Hope that gives you some useful insight there. And if anybody else has any other questions, just drop them in the comments and I will come back to the comments later on today and try to answer as many of those for you guys as I can. This will be live on YouTube a little bit later. Technically, it'll be live immediately, but we got to put the description and all that stuff up. We will be including links to all of the individual previous episodes that I think we referenced in here. So you guys will have access to all of that shortly. That'll probably be up in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So I'd love it if you guys would take a minute, drop by over on YouTube and drop a comment. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing y'all in 2026. All right, guys, that's a wrap for today. Hope you guys have an awesome New Year's Eve, and we'll see you on the other side.